Hey everybody, welcome to episode 7 of the Cashflow Joe podcast presented by Pip's Path. I'm Pip Stellick. I'm here with two of my business partners, Steve Hipple and Bradley Strack. Mr. Strack, how are you doing today?
I am out of this world.
Out of this world. It's interesting. He always has a new word. How many times he can get a new word is going to be amazing to see that. Steve Hipple, how's everything going in your world?
Hey, Pip, what's up?
Oh, not much. So we're here at Cashflow Joe to help beginning investors with their first transaction. And what we also want to do is help seasoned investors learn how to make more money, but how to do that with less of their own money and using leverage at a higher level and to do it in a much safer way. Our company trains and mentors thousands of students all over the world, Bradley, to become successful real estate investors. For more information, you need to visit our website at pipspath.com, where we have tons of free resources. And we even have a question where, for you guys that are new investors, how you can get started on your path. A questionnaire to help you guys get there. Bradley likes to call it the personal scorecard. Wasn't sure what he wanted me to call that, but that's what we're going to call it. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about the second book in Robert Kiyosaki's series of purple books. Steve, do you have a purple library at home?
I've read a bunch of them, but I wouldn't say the library, no.
Bradley, purple library?
I got the whole thing.
I have the purple library, and I had the Cashflow game. Either one of you guys have the Cashflow game?
I didn't have the
I bet
game.
you had the Cashflow game because, we gave it away as a gift.
It was a thing back in the day.
It was a thing back in the day.
Before the iPad, before the virtual game.
Yeah, one of our last episodes, we were talking about RIAs. And I remember going to a RIA and actually playing the Cashflow game. And so I think that's a great way to learn, is to use your RIAs and do that kind of stuff. And the game is a great opportunity to do that. But what I want to do is kind of take it back to the second book in the series called Cashflow Quadrant. Hopefully you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by now. You've had some time to do that. The next book I think you ought to be looking at is the book called Cashflow Quadrant. And what does Cashflow Quadrant do? It really breaks things up into, quadrants. Is that where the word quadrant comes from?
It's amazing.
And what does quadrant stand for? It stands for, is it 4?
That it is.
You can't have 5 quadrants?
Well,
Can you have 6 quadrants?
Brilliant.
You can have more than 4 quadrants? Can you do that?
It'd be tough.
I think so.
You
could have 6
quadrants,
groups of 4.
Quadrant square would be 8 squares.
But is it called a quadrant since quad means 4? What is it called? I don't even know what those words are, but here we go. And so the Cashflow Quadrant is broken up into 4 quadrants. And let me try to do the visual for those of you guys that are listening to the podcast today. And you have in one quadrant an E, and then right below it you have an S. E stands for employee. E stands for employee. S stands for small business owner. In the next quadrant, or on the other side, this would be the right side of it. On the top right, you'd have what's called a B, which stands for big business owner. And then you have an I, which stands for an investor. So let's break these down. And since Bradley, I think you were the quintessential employee in this group, what's the mindset of an employee when it comes to their job, their life, in many instances? Now, you can't speak for everybody, but what's the mindset of an employee?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to you're trading your time for money. Right now, I was working as a pharmacist, but whether I was the pharmacist or if you're the front-end cashier at Walgreens, you're getting paid for your time. And if I wasn't there putting in that time, they weren't going to give me any money for it.
Thanks for making that a real long explanation. I appreciate that, but it is pretty simple, isn't it?
It's that easy.
I think a lot of the mentality with an employee is that, they think there's safety there. They think there's safety as an employee. What kind of safety? Because I think I want you to talk about, and I don't think you've ever said this on one of our podcasts before, but I've definitely heard you talking about this at dinner and stuff, is you went through a lot of work to become the best employee you could possibly be. Share that with the listeners as to, what did you do, and then how did that really, what happened on that?
Well, I guess it really started off with the fact that I was just raised that hard work wins, right? So, okay, I could buy that for my mom and dad, that if I worked hard, I would get good results. To them, it was work hard at getting that really good job. To them, that job of being a pharmacist, it's a professional, it's a 6-figure salary. That was the be all end all. They had only wished they could have made it to that level. And so once I got there, however, I was seeing, okay, well, what can I do even more? I could move up within this company with Walgreens. So even though I'm managing the pharmacy, because I had my doctorate, I still, any level above what I was doing was going to be working on managing multiple stores. And it no longer was about counting pills or knowing drug interactions. It was operating a multi-million-dollar business. So as I'm managing the pharmacy, now I enroll and I'm getting my master's. So I'm a full-time MBA student at the University of Florida, because that's what's going to help me move up this corporate ladder faster. What am I going to get there? Well, I'm going to get more vacation. I'm going to get more company perks, a company car. They'll pay for my cell phone, all these things. And, again, that's what my parents told me, that's what you can get to. This is where you can go. And when I look back, and you guys always make the joke about, there hasn't even been a down market since I've been investing.
That's not a joke. That's a fact.
You're exactly right. But I look back, and this was something that really, I didn't know how much it would affect me until I was already then in the pharmacy, and then had gotten that MBA and had the rug pulled out from under me when the company restructured, and all of a sudden, all that hard work I had put in, all the people I had met, it was all gone. And the promise of promotion was given to me by a guy who was then in early retirement. So I realized very quickly that even working hard at the pharmacy and going the extra mile, getting that extra degree, I was putting in extra time, helping my district manager do things on my days off, thinking that hard work would get me to where I wanted to go faster. But it really kind of did the opposite. It showed me that I was still just a number to them. Even though I had done all those things, when they restructured the company, nobody cared anymore about what I had done with that last district manager, or what corporate initiatives I had over or beat all the other stores of my region on, whatever it may have been. And so real estate really allowed me to kind of take that control back. I wanted to be my own boss. So I was willing to work hard. I wanted to reap the benefits of that, because at the end of the day, it was only one stream of income at Walgreens, and I was getting expensive for them. Every time they promoted me, our business partner Sam likes to say, every time you get a promotion, you're another day closer to being too expensive for your company. And I think that was true. And in '08, when I saw my family members, so my mom and dad, not just that, but my aunts and uncles who I was close with, who had, tried to save their way to wealth. They're all at about that retirement age, late 50s, early 60s. And 2008 came. Yeah, I'm still in college, but I hear my parents and relatives all complaining about the fact that half of what they thought they had for retirement was gone overnight. And so it made me then think, as I was working in that pharmacy, trying to stack up a big 401k and put in as much as I could every year, that, wait a minute, what if the market goes down when I go to retire? Because it added 10 years to many of my family and my relatives' careers, because all their eggs were in that one basket of the market of that safe 401k that they had put together over 40 years working for a corporation. And then they were all of a sudden wondering how they were going to make it through. So it kind of introduced me to the concept that I didn't know what I needed to do different. But that wasn't going to be the way that I was going to have a secure or fulfilling life.
And it's interesting, because you think you take the safe road, and it ends up becoming probably the least safe, because when we look at the whole mentality, the employee mentality, you only have one customer. If you're dependent upon one customer and something happens to that customer, then your whole life changes. And who's that one customer? It's your boss. And if you don't please your boss, then obviously now we've got a scenario where you're no longer employed. I know our business partner Sam likes to say his biggest issue with being an employee, and it's hard for me to talk about being an employee because I've never been one. Never once in my life was, I guess for a period of time I waited tables at a restaurant, but that was about it. I've always been a small business owner or a business owner or investor, which is kind of interesting. But Sam likes to say all the time, he says, what bothered him about being an employee was they bought you at wholesale and they sold you at retail. So they bought you at I mean, think about this for just a second. And I know the numbers I'm going to use may or may not make sense to you. But let's say that you're a plumber and you make $40 an hour, and that's your salary as a plumber. But do they sell you at $40 an hour out there to the customer? No, it's at 80 or $100 an hour. And I know some of you guys might think those numbers are out of whack, but what they're doing is they're buying you at $40 an hour, but they're billing you out at $100 an hour. And so they're buying you at wholesale and selling you at retail. So that's the whole quandary of being an employee. You think it's safe, but generally it's the least safe place to be and probably the highest risk when you look at it that way. So Steve, I know you were probably more of an employee at the small business that you worked at because you were an outlaw, an in-law to that group. Would that be a fair statement?
That's right.
Did you ever have any ownership in the company?
Not technically, no.
No.
There was some paper here and there, but the simple answer is no.
So let's think about that for just a second. So you saw how a small business worked on a day-to-day basis, working 50, 60, 70 hours in it. So what's the mindset? Because you saw a lot of your relatives who were small business owners. I grew up in a small business mentality. What's the mindset of somebody who's in that small business mentality?
Yeah, a lot of my family, friends, a lot of people in my social circles are all self-employed, small business owners. Even a lot of the mortgage brokers I deal with, self-employed, small business, your doctor, your dentist fall in that category too. So the whole range. But I guess the biggest difference is between employee to self-employed is as an employee, you have a job. When you're self-employed, you own a job. And so you're kind of like an employee, but you're tied to it. It's harder to get away. Vacations are a little bit limited. Can you make more money? Yeah, you can definitely make more money. Can you get some tax advantages? Yes, but you own that job. You're tied to it.
So obviously, it's just a glorified employee, really, is what it is. I think in many instances.
Well, you like to think you control your own destiny. The other thing too is, and Pip, you've got a great with the. You share the one with if you want something done. You've got a good way to describe that one.
Obviously my dad was an S. Be careful how you say that. My dad was a small business owner. If he'd come home from work, he'd say, if I want things done right, I've got to do them myself. And that's the quandary of the small business owner. They have to be the smartest person on their team. They have to. Everything comes. Every sentence starts with the word I. I got to do this. I got to do that. I don't have anybody that can help me with this.
Mm-hmm. And you just fall into that trap. One, it's a small business, so your revenue is limited. And two, as a small business, you try and hire a manager. Well, if that manager doesn't work out, you just accept those responsibilities yourself. Maybe you try and hire a bookkeeper. Well, if the bookkeeper's on vacation or maternity or whatever it is, if the bookkeeper's not there, then you just assume those responsibilities yourself, whether payroll, bookkeeping, all these things, maybe just working with your customers. All these things fall back on you. You've got the knowledge. You're there, you care probably more than anybody else. And so sometimes by default, you just do this because the worst thing is if you can do it faster and better and cheaper than people you're trying to hire, by default, all things kind of land on you. And that's the situation I was in. And I think too many small business owners, too many self-employed people just think, I'll just do it myself. It's easier. They're saving some money, but they're just creating more work for themselves. They're not outsourcing. They're not working on their business or working in their business. And that's dangerous because there's no freedom.
Yeah, and I think what we really wonder when we look at that kind of stuff is you create your own little jail for yourself because you are, what's the old saying? I don't even know where it comes from, the chief cook and bottle washer. I'm not sure what that means, but I've heard that from my parents years ago. Have you ever heard that comment, Bradley?
That must be back from in your day.
Yeah, not in your day, I assume. Have you heard chief cook and bottle washer?
Bradley shamed me, but I've heard of that one.
I don't know what that even means, but it just means that you're the only one doing the work and you got to do it all. And so I think you create this little island of working harder. And so what I notice is a lot of people who are employees in that upper left-hand quadrant of the Cashflow Quadrant, their E's, and what do they want to do? They say, if I could just be my own boss, I want to graduate into being my own boss and being a small business owner. And what they find out is many times they're just working a lot more hours for just a little bit more pay and probably even less freedom than they had when they were an employee. And that's tough. And the one problem with, I think, self-employed people is that there's only so many hours in a day. And I know when I was working in my family-owned grocery store, I was trying to figure out how I could work more hours and sleep less. And I think if your plan is to learn how to sleep less, you're probably not on the right path at all. We want to learn how to be on the right side of the quadrant, left side versus the right side of the quadrant. And on the right side of the quadrant is the B business owner. So what's the difference between a B and an S? I probably should flip that around because that probably doesn't sound right. What's the difference between an S business owner and a B business owner? A B business owner can walk away from their business for up to a year at a time, and their business is in better shape than the day they left it. So, Bradley, you're working through that being a B business owner. And I know I say these on a regular basis. Let's see if you can remember them as a newer business owner. What are the three things that you see somebody on the B quadrant have that somebody on the S quadrant doesn't have?
Well, and I think, and I do know the three things, so look at me, make you proud. But the thing it really comes down to is, and we're probably all great examples of this, is we had hardworking families. You had the dad who he would just get in there, roll his sleeves up and do it. Steve's dad's still working at his own business. Like, these are guys who understand that hard work works. But we didn't want to become that. We wanted to have some of that time back. And I know that I look back at the hard work we did, and my dad and I would spend the entire weekend figuring out how to run electrical in our basement because, well, we weren't going to pay for somebody to go do that for us. And when you step back and you think about what are wealthy people doing, they're not cutting their own grass because that's a $10, $20 an hour job. And if they can go out and do what they do and make $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour, $10,000 an hour, well, I'd rather just do that for 3 hours a week than work 80 hours a week because I feel good about doing the hard work. So I think that shift comes in having three things. And it's one, you got to have some trust. So you've got to believe that people you're going to work with, you've got to trust them. Until they prove you wrong, then they've got to have your trust. But you've got to have a system for them to follow. I guess take this moment, for example. Pip teased me up with a thing. He wants me to say three things. I know it. Why do I know it? He trusted me that I know it because there's a system that he taught me how to know what to say. I mean, it's a system. Anybody can do it if they're willing to put in the effort. And last but not least is the support. So with those three things, trust, systems, and support, that's how you can really take yourself out of owning and working in your business and working on that business where you can really get some time back.
And Bradley, I like how you knew the three things that Pip, because we didn't talk about this in advance. It was like, let's go. And I'm like, what am I talking about? And here, so Pip's just doing this. We're off the cuff right here. I like the fact that Bradley knew those three things, as I did too. But if you didn't know those three things, guarantee Pip is going to remind you of that for the next 25 podcast recordings. He'll tell you every time.
Well, I just want to say this. When I was throwing that out, I had to think in my mind, should I throw that to Steve or to Bradley? And there was a 99% chance I was not going to throw it to Steve because I knew he'd miss one of the three things. That's why I didn't throw it to him.
Come on.
Yeah.
I was taught by the best. This guy back in Canada who taught me a long time ago, I was
That's it.
by the best.
Oh, ouch. Boy, there's an inside joke. And so when we look at this stuff, and Bradley's right, and we all know people that own their own small business. And so Steve talked about owning a job. When you're a B business owner, you can walk away from that business. And if you're not, you just basically own a job if you can't walk away from it. And we see that, and I can give you all kinds of examples. If we look at, and I know you may not like the examples that I give you, but if we look at Microsoft, Bill Gates is no longer running Microsoft, and Microsoft is still growing. And we've got Elon Musk. He's no longer running Tesla, and it's still growing. He's doing other things with Twitter or whatever it's called now. What's it called now?
X.
X. Wow, that's a brilliant name. And in either way, we have to look at our business the exact same way, and that's what you want to be able to do. And you have to have trust, systems, and support, because we all know that small business owner that won't let anybody else in the cash register. The only one that can get in the cash register themselves, or maybe their spouse, because they don't trust anybody, they don't have systems in place, and they don't have anybody to support that. And so that's the biggest difference between that B business owner and that small business owner. So Steve, I know the last quadrant is an I, just like you know that. And that means it stands for investor, and that's your money is working for you. You do a lot of investing, not just in property, but you do other investing with stocks and stuff. So maybe expand. Tell us a little bit about what's a mindset of an I, an investor, when we look at this kind of stuff.
Mindset of an I think there's opportunity. You're an entrepreneur. You're curious, looking for opportunities. Say, there's real estate, stocks. There's all kinds. You can Bitcoin. There's developing. There's all kinds of things you can invest in. That's what I stands for as investor. And the great thing is anybody can be an investor. There's different levels, of course, but let's talk about on the employee. Anybody can be an investor, or anybody can be an employee, I should say. But do you want to be an employee? Some people love their jobs. Good for them. A lot of people don't love their jobs. There's a bit of negativity there. Do you want to be self-employed? Do you want to be a small business owner? That's hard. A lot of hours. What do you buy? What can you make money at? Business, big business. That's big business. Those are hard to come by, hard to manage. Takes a big skill set. Then we get to I. I'm an investor. Pip's an investor. Bradley's an investor. Sam, we're all investors. We've got over 50 people, 50 independent contractors at Pip's Path who are all investors. A lot of my friends are investors. A lot of people I socialize with on a regular basis. My power team, a lot of investors on different levels, right? But anybody can become an investor. And when Pip talked about it, this is where your money is making money. And if you go invest in the stock market, you need cash. You can be in a stock market investor, buy Bitcoin or buy Microsoft, buy Tesla or X or whatever they call it now. You can buy these stocks, but, is that going to make the return? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But with real estate, my point is with stocks, you need cash. Can you borrow money to do stocks? Not really. You walk in the bank, they're not going to lend you money to buy stocks. But you walk in the bank, hey, I want to buy a property. I've got the down payment here. I want to borrow 80% from the bank to buy property. You can be an investor. Every deal we talk about with Pip's Path, we talk about using none of your own money, none of your own credit. You can be an investor using somebody else's money. We've got podcasts on joint ventures, podcasts on heart-made lenders. We've talked about private money, syndicate mortgage, all these things. There's so many ways you can do property with somebody else's money. And that's very cool when you can make money using somebody else's money. So if I've got no money invested, and if I make $1, my return is an infinite return, right? I've got no money invested, so my return is infinite. Even if I borrow the money, I still make money. I can share that deal with Pip. I can share that deal with Bradley. I'm making money. So it's very achievable to become an investor, no matter what you want to do with property and real estate. That's how we're all connected here through Pip's Path. There's so many ways you can do real estate investments on the investment side. I've been on the left side of the quadrant. I've been on the employee side. I've been on the small business or self-employed side. And I've also been on the right side. I've been on the investor side, not so much the big business side, but I've been on the investor side. And I'll tell you, it's far better on the right. In fact, I want you to turn the person's side, you give them a high five, say, you're going to be all right.
You're going to be all right.
All right.
Definitely. And what's interesting is Steve was talking about borrow money to buy stocks. You could go into any bank, Bank of America or Wells Fargo, Chase Bank, that are publicly traded companies, and you could ask them to borrow money to buy stock in their stock. So you could go to Bank of America and say, hey, I'm buying Bank of America stock, and I want to buy 100,000 shares. I have 20,000 of my own money. Will you lend me the other 80? They'll laugh at you. They wouldn't even think about doing that. So they won't even lend money to buy stock in their own company. So there's a big difference in that mentality. And we'll start to see that as we get more into different podcasts with leverage and things such as that. But when we look at this whole left side versus right side, and I learned this stuff years ago, and what we find is on the left side is a lot more negativity. And there's a balance between left and right. There's a balance between left and right. Steve's got cheat sheet up here so he doesn't forget anything. There is a balance between the left and the right. And when we look at that, everybody thinks, oh my gosh, this is brand new information, that this Cashflow Quadrant has just been around since Robert Kiyosaki has put this out there. This left side versus right side mentality has been around for centuries. Native Americans used to have a saying, and the saying was, whichever wolf you feed is the wolf that's going to grow. It's that left-sided wolf versus the right-sided wolf. You've heard people say, well, I've got two voices, and which voice do you listen to? And this isn't about being right or wrong. This is about reality, because what we see on the left side with the employees and small business owners is a lot more negativity, which we see on the right side with business owners and investors is a lot more positive stuff. Negative versus positive. We see that on a regular basis. And there's a lot of other things that we see throughout that. Bradley, what are some things that you see on the left side versus the right side? And I'll say this one last thing, and I'm going to throw it over to Bradley, is generally about 95% of the people live on the left side of the quadrant, and only about 5% of the people live on the right. So what are some things that you see differences between the left side and the right side, Bradley?
Well, I would say the biggest thing I've seen, and probably one of my biggest obstacles to overcome, because this was me, is people on the left side, which, like we said, is the majority of people, tend to be very skeptical. And
You're skeptical? No way. Get
would
out of
have
town.
even guessed? Well, it comes honestly, I guess, as an analytical type of personality, and being a pharmacist where my expectation was perfection at my job, because clearly nobody's going to be okay if I mess anything up. But skepticism was something that was kind of ingrained in me. Like an engineer would have that, you got to look for fault type of mindset. And that can be very difficult when you want to do something that you've never done before, have no experience in, because I had to do a lot of things in faith. And rather than being able to know every single step A to Z, I just had to take that one next step every single day to get closer to what I wanted to do. But what I realized is you could come up with a million reasons why something wouldn't work, when really you only needed one reason why you would make it work, or one reason why it was worth taking the chance on. And so I think a big difference between the left and right is that skeptical versus successful. So you can be skeptical or you can be successful, but you certainly can't be both.
I love that one. Skeptical versus successful. That's one we use on a regular basis. Steve, what are some things you see on left side versus right side?
Left side versus right side comes to mind is a left side, a scarcity mentality. A lot of people on the left side, they're ingrained this scarcity mentality, versus on the right side would be an abundant mentality. So let me give you an example of scarcity. Employee side, self-employed, get somebody who hates their job. They say, well, I'll go find another job. They say, well, I can't leave my job. I might not get the same pay. I might not get this. I might not get that. And so the whole scarcity thing is just this fear of, okay, everybody has bills to pay. Everybody has people to feed. You got to look after your family, of course. So just to leave your job is not an easy thing. But this thing of, well, then maybe go back to school, get a side hustle, learn to invest in property, do something, prepare yourself to leave your job, and then leave your job when you're ready. But they just never do. A lot of people, what's the old saying? Misery loves company, where a lot of people just rather stay in the misery than change or learn a new skill. So the whole scarcity mentality in real estate, with scarcity, people say, oh, there's no good deals. I can't find a good deal. We do. South Florida was the best. South Florida is like, well, Steve, I'm not sure where you invest, but this is South Florida, and there's no good deals. I've been looking for X amount of months, X number of years. Well, I don't know. We've done business in South Florida. Is it a hot market? It has been. Yes, of course, but supply and demand, it's a great market to invest in. We've done classes in Denver and LA and Phoenix, and every market we go to, they say, Steve, Bradley, Pip, Sam, say, I don't know what you guys been, but this is LA. It's different. This is a hot market. Well, it's a scarcity mentality. Right? There's ways to get around that. We talk a lot about helping people with the real estate problems. I'm sure we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode a lot more. We talk about it. You start helping people rather than looking for deals, you'll find deals that you hadn't found before. So when people say there's no deals around here, or I can't find the money, or my tenants are bad, or I can't find a property, I can't find a contractor, the scarcity is all over. It's everywhere, the scarcity mentality. But on the abundant side is, where do you find these? Let's reach out. Don't reach out, reach up. Try and find help. If you need a contractor, join some RIAs. Talk to some people. Hey, do you have a good contractor in the area? If you think it's going to happen overnight on your timeline, on your budget, it's probably not. Is it your first renovation? Expect contractors will be behind on schedule. Expect it will cost you a bit more than you thought it would. Expect there may be a hiccup. That's just the way it is. That's real estate. It was easy. Everybody be doing it. But you know what? It's so worth it. But on the abundant side, I've had contractors, I say, hey, well, if this contractor wasn't the best, I'll get a different contractor next time, or I'll keep looking for the better contractor. But contractors, they're a tough part of the business, no question, but there are good ones out there. You got to find them. When you find them, take care of them and keep them. So the whole abundant side of the business, there is deals out there. There is opportunity out there. There is joint venture partners out there. Be patient. What does Sam always say? I feel like Sam is here with us. So Sam's got so many great sayings. He says, don't ask for it to be easier. Ask yourself to be better. And when you want to level up, find whether you're finding money for a deal or finding other deals that you haven't done before, or new strategies. If you're a flipper, you want to do lease options, or you're a flipper, you want to do a joint venture, just level up. Just get the skills and learn how to do that. So biggest thing I see, Pip, is the scarcity versus abundant mentality.
I love how Steve just gave Sam credit for a Jim Rohn quote. That's awesome, and that proves that you don't know who has said what quotes out there. I mean, nobody knows that. And what's interesting, and Steve, you're exactly right. You said we're going to talk about how to find people that have problems. I think people on the left focus on the problem, whereas people on the right focus on the solution. People on the left are workers, where people on the right are creators. They create the work for the people on the left. I think one of the biggest differences I see, and then I'm going to let Bradley talk about I can't afford it versus how I can afford it, which is a totally Robert Kiyosaki mentality. But the last one I want to share is people on the left, I think most of their life is based on a fear mechanism, and they're trying to go through life to avoid pain by working in their world, and there's a lot of fear. Whereas people on the right, they see an opportunity. Is it scary to go out on your own? Is it scary to renovate a property, to do a lease option, to do an Airbnb? Amen. It's very scary to do those kinds of things. But if we are willing to take that leap of faith and know that there's a support mechanism with people like Pip's Path to help you with that, then you can actually take those leaps and be a lot more secure than the actual real fear, which is being on that left side and not having any control over your future. At least I know that I'm going to take a bet on me every time, and I'll bet on me all day long instead of betting on somebody else trying to provide a job for me. That's how I look at it. I want to be the one in control of my life. So Bradley, Kiyosaki talks a lot about I can't afford it versus how can I afford it. Let's expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, the idea of this is most people on the left side of the quadrant will say, I can't afford that. So, mom and dad growing up, I said, oh man, that's a really cool convertible car. Why don't we have a convertible car like that? So, well, we can't just go out and buy something like that. We can't afford a fancy car like that can't haul 4 kids and soccer equipment and baseball gear around, right? And in my head, I guess growing up, you just go, okay, well, we can't afford it. Like it's a statement. The conversation was over. There was no more questions to be asked. But what I realized reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and specifically how Kiyosaki describes in the Cashflow Quadrant is people on the right-hand side don't say, well, I can't afford that convertible or that house or that vacation. They ask themselves, how can I afford those things? And I think if we start asking that question, which you'll notice is a question, not a statement, like I can't afford it is a statement, but how can I afford it being a question? We're seeking that solution that you're talking about. We're looking to find a way where, how does it make sense that I can buy that convertible? Well, a fourplex that pays me $1,000 a month in cash flow after my expenses could make the monthly payment on a pretty nice car. So now all of a sudden I have a way that I can afford those nicer things because I understand that there's a way to get an asset that will actually fund or pay for the things that I want.
That's awesome. And I'm going to have Sam in one of our future episodes talk about a story of buying assets to pay for your liabilities. So this is a lot about the cash flow quadrant. We could talk even longer on this. There's so much. Everything I've ever done from a teaching standpoint is a teaching from the cash flow quadrant. Guess what? For those of you guys that are in sales out there, everything I've ever sold from comes from the cash flow quadrant. And if you don't think you're in sales, you're wrong. Every one of us is in sales. We'll talk more about that on future episodes as well. The key is your whole life can be changed by understanding how the mindset of the cash flow quadrant works. And that's what we want to make sure you guys see. And if you read the book Cash Flow Quadrant, it'll start putting that in perspective for you. So the next episode, we're going to talk about the benefits of real estate investing and the tax advantages that go with that. Now, I'm going to have to tell you when we start that episode, none of us are lawyers, none of us are accountants, but we are going to make sure that we give you some tips and tricks on that. I love what Robert Kiyosaki says. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. So we see a lot of high wage earners out there that make a lot of money, but they don't actually keep a lot of that money because they pay a lot in taxes. Well, one of the best ways to invest is using property because we get all kinds of benefits. The reason we get those benefits, as we talk about on our next episode, is because the government, the IRS, they want us to be real estate investors because we're providing a great service for the citizens of our country. So subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you use. Make sure you for more information on our in investing, go to our website at pipspath.com. Follow us on social media, ladies and gentlemen, at PipsPath the Property and Cashflow Joe Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all kinds of things like that. Leave us a comment, give us a follow, and we look forward to seeing you on the path.